call me Crazy Joe, but now they can call me Batman.
What up? Welcome back once again to the Necro Zoo. I am Bones. And in this one, let's go ahead and add one more figure to my McFarlane DC Multiverse collection. Now, today we will take a look at the next figure in the Collector's Edition series, and that will be Ragman. Now, I'm not really expecting much from this figure, but I do want to take a look at it. I have seen other reviews on him, and I wanted to delve in and take a look at him myself. Now, this is another time when McFarlane is going deep into the character selection of the DC Universe. Don't really see a lot of Ragman figures, and I do think that this is the first time we have him in plastic form. Now, we will get into that aside from other things. There are some things I did enjoy, but there's some things that, not too exciting. But we will go ahead and take a look at that. But first, he does look pretty determined in the packaging. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at him. Now, he does come with your standard black DC Multiverse stand. Only difference being that, of course, these collector's edition have a silver DC logo. Also comes with his collector's card. Now, there's not too many different versions of Ragman, although you do have the original version, and now you have a more modern take with a different backstory. But to break it down, he does have a sort of dark tinge to him, which you can see on the source material cover art. There are some souls trapped in his costume, and it has to do with his powers and abilities. Now, if you take a look at the back, you do have some information. Rory Regan. As I said, there are slight changes to his backstory, but basically he is the same. Now, I never really got into Ragman. I don't even really remember seeing any iconic covers or anything like that. But now looking back and taking a look at some of the artwork, it does look very interesting. While at first I was definitely uninformed about his backstory and powers, because at first I basically thought his powers was living in the alleys with the rats and roaches and basically looking like a hobo. But I have come to find out that he does have a darker, a little bit sinister backstory, wherein all of his powers come from souls that are trapped in his costume. Pretty cool. We'll hold on to that. Now, the only accessories that he comes with are these energy effects. I'm not sure if they're supposed to be rags coming off of his costume. As I said, there are some pretty nice images of him online, giving his character a little bit more depth. But these effects, don't blow me away or anything like that. But we will hold on to them. No alternate hands. Once again, McFarlane, for being the collector's edition series, definitely light on the accessories. Now, there is a little bit more fun to be had with him once you get him in hand, especially with the cape and hood. But being as how this figure is made off of the original John Kent Buck, I do not know why they just didn't add a couple of extra hands. But we will take care of that later on in the video. Now, once again, he does come with the DC card stand. There is a rumor that these will be going away. Hopefully that is true, because they are definitely starting to pile up. Now let's go ahead and take a closer look at this guy. First impressions, really fun character, really fun that McFarlane is making these obscure characters. Now, I talked about how this is the first time, I'm pretty sure, that we've seen him in plastic form. And this kind of reminds me that I used to watch a lot of the Spectre Creative channel here on YouTube because, of course, I was a big DC Universe Classics collector. And since he was the brand manager, the guy in charge of the whole DC Universe Classics line, I really found it interesting to get some of the, backstory on how they did the line and how they chose the characters. In one of his videos, he did talk about how they did the fan voting series where they voted on characters to be made into action figures. Now, funny enough, I think there was like 4 or 5 different characters. The eventual winner, which was the Question, Huntress, Starman, a couple of other characters that would eventually be made, even if they went into the signature series line. But the only one out of these characters that was never made into an action figure was Ragman. Now, he also did talk about how it was going to be the most expensive figure out of all of these. And at first, that was kind of hard to believe. But when you put into consideration that sculpting the body with all the patches and the different textures, which I really think McFarlane could have excelled at, you only get to use that with this character. That's basically a mold that will never be reused because painting is a very costly process. That is why I think McFarlane in these figures in this time has reduced a lot of the paint, the washes, and stuff like that, is to keep it in that mass market retail price point for your average consumer, even though, us as collectors, diehards for DC figures, it does kind of bite us in the butt because we want that sculpt work, we want that detail, and sometimes we just don't get it because of the limited budget for each figure. But aside from that, what I'm looking at here is Ragman for the first time in action figure form. Not too shabby. You do get the feel of the different patches and rags on his costume, although it is not really complete because they are just painted on. But for a figure, a character that people are really not going to know, like a random consumer is not going to go down the toy aisle and really recognize or know who Ragman is, that is why he is in the collector series, because McFarlane did say that the collector's line was going to be a little bit more of character selection, not necessarily more accessories or more sculpt work, but delving into that deeper character pool of the DC universe. So it is a double edged sword. We do get our first Ragman figure, but he definitely is light on sculpt and on paint. Besides the fact it is just a reuse of the John Kent buck, but I digest. Now, going back to the figure, a lot of people wouldn't have big expectations because I really think this is just another fun character to finally have in hand and add him to our DC shelf. But just feeling him in hand really brings a lot out of him. I am a big fan of that John Kent buck, even though it has been reused an absorbent amount of times. It doesn't bother me, especially when you have a more slender character like Ragman. Let's take a look at the head sculpt. Now, first thing you're going to notice is he does have this hood over his head. It does have a wire in it, so that's a sort of little extra added touch where you can really play around with and shape the hood in the way you want to. It does have a peak on top, and you can pull it back to reveal his head sculpt. Now, nothing to take away from the head sculpt. It does have that cloth feel to it, especially around the mouth. And the paint apps are really nice. But of course, you don't get any patches on the back of the head. But that's not something consequential, as you'll usually have his hood covering it. Now, this allows you to show the articulation. He can look down pretty good, looks up as well, respectable. You got right to left, and of course, you could tilt his head for some attitude, slide that hood, and pretty fun little character. Nothing amazing, but I, for one, am happy to add him to the collection. Going down, you have these tassels hanging from his cloak, We'll get into the cloak later on. But you definitely do have a smooth transition from the upper chest into the abdominals, down into the pelvis where the trunks are. This definitely has a nice superhero cut and silhouette. Let's take a look at the waist articulation. You do have side to side. You got that full tilt-a-whirl at the waist, lower waist swivel, upper chest swivel. You can twist them, get them in some cool poses. You do have a slight forward crunch, more than usual for McFarlane, so that's pretty nice. Now you can mod these and get even more out of it. Leans back, per usual with McFarlane, so that's very nice range and movement in the torso. Take a look at the shoulder. You do have that socket and bushing shoulder joint with a lot of movement up and down, front to back, bicep swivel, double jointed elbows that collapse on themselves for the full range of movement. Straighten it back out. You do have the patches painted on the sleeve going down into the four ways of articulation for the wrist and a fist on the left side. Now, if you go to the opposite side, you do have the same thing, but you just have an open gesturing hand, which is fine for this character. I just really wish, since the hand molds are already there, they would have added an assortment of alternate hands. Get them in a T pose, pretty smooth. Lift the arms above the head. Awesome. Let's go ahead and go down to the thighs. You do have some good movement at the thigh swivel there. That allows you to move the boot from side to side without having a thigh cut. Kicks up even further, kicks back as well. Now the trunks are made of rubber. That allows you to kick back as far as he does. And when you put them back, the trunks go back to their original shape. Cock out the leg. You do have that McFarlane hip swivel, double jointed knees, pretty nice. Straighten them out, up and down at the boot, left to right, and of course, rocker. And then you have toe articulation. Now, before we go, taking a complete look, this is just reused from the John Kent. You even have the sculpted out detail at the bottom of the ankles. Now, not sure when they produced this. It could have been after they produced the ambush bug, who has a clean sculpt with no added details. It kind of fits a little bit. They could have added a paint square right on the shape there just to hide it a little bit more. But definitely not my preferred execution of the figure. Take a look at them from the bottom. You do have some identifying marks, but no tread. Now, up the back, of course, McFarlane, knowing that you're not really going to see the back, there is no paint apps on the back of the figure. Just like the head sculpt, there's no patches back here. It's just the solid color of the plastic. But what you do get into is this beautiful wired cloak. Now, it does have some really nice damage to it, as if he's in his element living in the alleys with the rest of the bums. So that is a nice touch to this figure. You can manipulate that cape to your heart's desire. This is something that I really do have a lot of fun with. And if you just move the wires the way you want, you start on one end and just, slowly bend it, you can really get some cool poses and shapes with that wired cape. So pretty nice. That is probably the best detail of this figure. Not only can you reshape the cape and get some really cool photos for figure photography, you can also manipulate the hood, have it riding low or have it skewed to the side. It is a separate piece, so you can still articulate the head. But all in all, pretty nice figure. I'm not blown away. I do like the wired cape and the soft goods, and the fact that this is a character that you're never going to see in a toy line. Now, I did talk about how I wanted alternate hands, so you can pop off the hands really easily because these are also the hands from Jim Gordon as Batman, and that guy came with multiple hands, so I just do not understand why McFarlane won't throw at least an alternate fist in. So I did take an extra fist that I have and repaint it, match the color. That pops in really nicely. And now you do have a dual fisted Ragman, which is a lot more fun to pose and have on your shelf. So pretty cool, pretty sweet. Nothing great, like I said before, but it is fun for what it is. Now, I did go ahead and do some figure photography. It does have respectable articulation, so you could crouch them down. You can add the effects as well. Although I'm not the big fan of these, they are something to add to your character. And once again, as I said before, Ambush Bug really goes good with this guy. Two characters that you're really not going to see. So that is one positive in the McFarlane DC Multiverse line. We're getting some great figures. We're getting some awesome vehicles. We're getting some really out there characters. But there's still time to fill out our DC line. And I think there's 2 years left. And that is really a lot of time if you're collecting McFarlane because he pumps those figures out basically by the week, which is getting hard to keep track of. And I do have a lot of videos that I want to work on. I've gotten a lot of figures in. I just haven't really had time, especially when I go into, customizing, which I get a figure that I really want to customize and it just pops, out of the blue. I recently did a Ultimate Batman Beyond that I'll probably be doing a video on. So that's why there's not been a lot of videos because I've been doing a lot of little customs that I've been wanting to do. I also did an angry faced Nightfall Batman using the extra head I had left over from the Bane 2-pack. Because in the end, that is something I really enjoy doing with these figures. But anyways, you guys keep hunting out there, keep collecting, keep customizing, and I will see you on the next one.
They used to call me Crazy Joe, but now they can call me Batman.